The ballroom lights made everyone look better than they deserved. Even me. Even Elise. She stood near the small stage with a flute of champagne, laughing like the room belonged to her. People leaned toward her the way they always did, like her approval could turn a bad year into a promotion. She wore confidence the way other people wore fabric. Jade Mercer, our MC, had just warmed the crowd with harmless jokes and a playlist that tried too hard. A few phones were already up, hungry for a moment to post. You could feel it, the soft static of attention waiting to bite. Elise lifted her glass and aimed her smile at me across the room. "I need a new marriage," she said, loud enough to carry, sweet enough to pass for a joke. "This one's trash." Laughter splashed around her like applause. People glanced at me, expecting either a wounded grin or a jealous scene. They wanted entertainment. They always do. I let my face settle into something polite, something easy, something that didn't give them a headline. I smiled back at my wife, corporate HR chief, keeper of careers, curator of stories, and I walked toward her with my hands empty. No ring box, no angry speech, no desperate plea, just paper. When I reached her, I held out a slim envelope like a party favor. Elise's smile stayed in place, but her eyes narrowed the way they did when she smelled a risk. "Glad we finally agree on something," I said, and I handed her the already signed divorce papers. The room didn't gasp at first. It just quieted, like a sound system getting cut. Elise stared down at the envelope as if it might burn her fingers. Her laugh tried to come back, but it couldn't find the beat. Behind her, a projector screen waited, paused on a clean white slide with black text. Dates, places, payments, no commentary, no emotion, a record. And in that moment, Elise finally understood something she should have learned years ago. I wasn't going to fight her with feelings. I was going to kill her story with facts. My name is Nolan Hart. I work in compliance, which means I'm paid to notice what other people train themselves to ignore. Patterns, inconsistencies. The little slips that become big problems when someone finally asks for proof. It also means I've spent most of my adult life learning how to keep my face still while my mind does math. On day one, it started with a merchant alert. It was early evening, the kind of winter dark that makes the apartment windows look like mirrors. Elise had been home for 20 minutes, moving through our condo with a practiced lightness, heels off, blazer hung, hair pinned up again as if the day hadn't touched her. She was humming. That alone was unusual. Elise didn't hum unless she was winning. I was at the kitchen counter, half paying attention to a soup I didn't want, when my phone buzzed with the sound that meant money had moved. I didn't flinch. Compliance habits. I dried my hands slowly, picked up the phone, and glanced down like I was reading a text from a coworker. Alert. Card present purchase. 186.42. Pine and Ash Brasserie. I stared at it for 2 seconds too long. Pine and Ash was new. Expensive. Trendy. The kind of place Elise mocked in public and accidentally ended up at anyway. It was also across town, nowhere near her office, nowhere near the late mentorship meeting she'd mentioned that morning. And the alert wasn't from our joint card. It was from mine. I set the phone down face down on the counter and lifted the soup pot lid like I was checking steam. My heart didn't pound. That came later. What I felt first was something colder. A click. A line in my head turning from private life to ledger. Elise drifted into the kitchen behind me, brushing past with a kiss that landed somewhere between habit and performance. "Smells good," she said. "It's soup," I replied. She laughed softly like I'd made a joke. Elise did that sometimes, treated plain statements as humor so she didn't have to answer them. She opened the fridge and stared inside with unnecessary focus. She wasn't hungry. She wanted the posture of normal. "How was work?" I asked. "Busy." She pulled out sparkling water, then put it back, then pulled it out again. "Same old." "You're humming." She paused with the bottle in her hand, then smiled without turning. "Am I?" "You are." "Maybe I'm just in a good mood," she said. "Am I not allowed?" "You're allowed." There was a small silence. She hated silence when she wasn't controlling it. Elise turned and leaned her hip against the counter, the way she did when she was about to sell something. "We had a vendor dinner," she said. "Last minute. I forgot to mention it." I didn't respond immediately. I stirred the soup again, slow circles, letting her hear the spoon scrape the pot, letting her fill the space. "A vendor dinner," I repeated. "Mm-hmm. Procurement wanted it. Relationship building." She lifted her eyebrows. "You know, normal adult stuff." She made it sound like I lived under a rock. "Where was it?" I asked. She took a sip of water, buying time. "Near the office." And you paid? She gave me a look, half amused, half offended. It was easier. They'll reimburse. I got an alert. A flicker crossed her face. Too fast for most people. Not for me? What alert? She asked, and her tone was smooth enough to cut glass. My card, I said. Pine and Ash, 186. Elise blinked once. Then she laughed, loud and airy. Oh, that, yes, Pine and Ash. That's the place, near the office. It wasn't. But I didn't correct her. Not yet. I took my phone, turned it over, and looked at the alert again, just to burn it into memory. I didn't screenshot it. Not yet. I wanted to see if she'd push the lie further when she thought she was safe. Oh, who was there? I asked. A few people, she said, shrugging. Vendor, some leadership, procurement. You know how it is. I don't, I said. Her smile tightened. You're being weird. I'm asking about dinner. You never ask about my dinners, she said. Since when do you care? Since I got charged. I leaned my elbows on the counter and met her eyes. It's my card, I said. So I care. Elise's gaze held mine for a moment. Then she slid past, opening a drawer, pretending she needed something inside. You're acting like I did something wrong, she said. I didn't say that. You're implying it. I'm clarifying. She turned with a fork in her hand, as if she might stab a grape that didn't exist. Nolan, I'm exhausted. I spent all day cleaning up other people's messes. I don't want to come home and be interrogated. That word, interrogated. She chose it carefully, like she was building a file. I nodded once. Fine. She relaxed instantly, because she believed she'd won. Then she leaned in and kissed my cheek again, this time more firmly, like a stamp. Thank you, she murmured. Elise walked out of the kitchen, her footsteps light, her shoulders loose, and I stood there with a soup pot I no longer cared about, and a merchant alert that had turned my marriage into a case. I waited until I heard the bedroom door close. Then I picked up my phone and opened the alert again. I didn't take a screenshot yet. Screenshots were loud in a marriage like ours. Elise noticed everything that mattered to her. Instead, I did something smaller. I opened a notes app and typed, Day 1, Pine and Ash Brasserie. $186.42. Alert received 6:47 p.m. Elise claims vendor dinner near office. I saved it and set the phone down. Then I got a pen and a piece of paper from the drawer where we kept junk mail and cheap batteries. I drew a line down the page. On the left, I wrote, Date, Time. On the right, I wrote, Claim, Proof. It was the first page of my evidence ledger. I didn't call it that yet. Not out loud. In my head, I called it what it was. A way out. Later that night, Elise came back to the living room with her hair down and her laptop open, pretending she was finishing a few emails. She sat on the couch, legs tucked under her, looking like an ad for domestic calm. I sat in the armchair with my own laptop, not working, just holding still. Elise typed loudly. She always typed loudly when she wanted to be heard. You're quiet, she said. I'm tired, I replied. You're mad. I'm tired. She closed her laptop with a soft click. If you're going to punish me for using your card, just say it. I looked at her. I'm not punishing you. You are. You're doing the thing where you go blank. She tilted her head, voice gentler now. Is this about control? Do you feel out of control? There it was. The HR angle. The emotional framing. Make me the unstable one. I kept my face neutral. It's about clarity, I said. Clarity, she repeated, and smiled like I'd said something cute. Okay, let's be clear. I had a dinner, work-related, I paid. I'll pay you back if it helps your feelings. It's not about my feelings. Elise's eyes narrowed. Then what is it about? I didn't answer immediately. This was a fork in the road. I could confront her, demand details, force a fight, or I could do what compliance taught me. Let the subject speak until the truth tripped out. I stood up and walked to the kitchen for water I didn't need. Elise watched me like I was an exhibit. When I came back, I said, Who approved using my card? She blinked. What? My card isn't the company card, I said. So who approved it? Elise's lips parted, and for a second she looked genuinely irritated, like I'd challenged the rules of her world. Are you seriously asking that? She said. I'm your wife. I can use the card. That's not what I asked. She exhaled sharply. No one approved it. I grabbed the wrong card. Happy? It was a new detail. A shift. I nodded once, as if accepting it. Okay. Elise stared at me, waiting for more. Waiting for the fight. When it didn't come, she looked unsettled. "You're being calm," she said. "I'm always calm." "No," she said, voice sharpening again. "You're calm, like you're planning something." I smiled faintly. "You think too much." She held my gaze, trying to read me the way she read people in termination meetings. Then she stood, walked over, and sat on the arm of my chair, draping her arm across my shoulder. It was an intimacy move, but also a containment move. Keep me close. Keep me owned. "I don't want us to be weird," she murmured. "We're fine." We weren't, but I nodded anyway. Elise kissed my temple, then stood and headed toward the bedroom. At the doorway, she paused. Nolan?" "Yeah. If you ever feel like you're spiraling," she said, voice soft, "you can talk to someone. You don't have to internalize." Spiraling. Another word for a file. I watched her disappear into the bedroom. Then I went to the kitchen, opened my phone, and checked the alert again. I did one more small thing. I noted the exact timestamp down to the minute, and I wrote it on the paper ledger. Because if Elise wanted to turn my calm into a symptom, I would turn her lies into a timeline. The next morning, day 2, she was up before me. I found her in the bathroom, hair pinned, lipstick perfect, a blazer laid out like armor. She looked fresh enough to convince the world she slept peacefully. "Morning," I said. "Morning," she replied, not looking up from the mirror. "Where are you today?" I asked. She applied mascara with a steady hand. "Office, meetings, same." "And tonight?" She paused. "Why?" "Planning," I said. "Dinner, groceries." She glanced at me in the mirror, eyes measuring. "I might be late. We have a leadership thing." "A leadership thing," I repeated. "Stop copying me." "I'm not copying," I said. "I'm clarifying." Elise turned fully then, leaning back against the counter. "What is going on with you?" I met her eyes. "Nothing." "That's not an answer," she said. "It's the truth." She stepped closer, close enough that I could smell her perfume. Clean citrus, expensive, sharp. "If you're anxious," she said, "I need you to say that, because I don't have time for passive-aggressive moods." "I'm not passive-aggressive," I said. "You're being controlling." There it was again. Control, frame me, label me. I smiled slightly. "If I were controlling," I said, "you'd know." Elise didn't like that. Not because it was mean, because it suggested she wasn't in charge. Her phone buzzed on the counter. She reached for it too fast. That was the moment. The screen lit up just for a second while her thumb hovered. A preview banner flashed across the top. I wasn't close enough to read every word, but I caught enough. A name, Grant, and a place, Lobby Bar, and one line that wasn't meant for me, same time tonight. Elise's thumb swiped it away like it had never existed. She slipped the phone into her pocket and smiled. "Coffee?" she asked, too bright. I nodded. "Sure." She breezed past me, humming again, already in her winning mood, and I stood there, in my own bathroom, feeling the click in my head lock into place. Tonight wasn't a leadership thing. Tonight was a routine, a public routine spot. I waited until she left the condo. Then I sat at the kitchen table with my phone and my paper ledger. This time I took the screenshot. My hands didn't shake, my breathing didn't change. I captured the lock screen preview the way I would capture an audit artifact, clean, quiet, and exact. Then I wrote, Day 2, 7:12 a.m. Lock screen preview, Grant, Lobby Bar, same time tonight. I stared at the words for a moment. Grant Keller. The vendor lead whose name floated around Elise's world like a new toy. I didn't know him personally yet, but I knew the type. Loud success, casual charm, a man who thought attention was a right. Elise liked men like that because they made her feel powerful by association. What Elise didn't understand was that her power had limits. A timeline doesn't care who you are. At lunch on day 3, I didn't go home. I went to campus. Not her office. She'd never let me breathe there. I went to the orbit around it, the cafe where vendors drifted, the courtyard where people took calls, the glass doors where badge lanyards swung like status symbols. I kept my posture normal, not hunting, not stalking, just existing where employees and vendors existed. That was the thing about lawful evidence. You didn't need tricks, you needed patience. I bought a coffee I didn't want and sat near the window, and I watched. It took 15 minutes. Elise walked in like she owned gravity. She wore a smile meant for an audience and a blouse that wasn't for meetings. She scanned the room once, then spotted someone and lifted her hand. A man stood up from a corner table. Tall, clean hair, a blazer that looked expensive but casual, like he wanted everyone to believe money had never been a struggle. He smiled broadly, already performing. Grant Keller. He didn't kiss her, not here. Not where HR optics mattered. He didn't touch her waist. He didn't do anything a camera could frame as guilt. Instead, he leaned in close enough that their faces almost touched, and Elise laughed into his shoulder like it was normal. I didn't take a photo of them, not yet. I waited, because one good proof was better than 10 weak ones. A few minutes later, my phone buzzed again. Not a merchant alert. A social notification. I opened it and saw a tagged story from the cafe's official page. Someone had posted a short clip of the lunch crowd, a harmless marketing thing. And there, in the background, blurred but clear enough, Elise and Grant sat close at the corner table. A date stamp sat at the top. I saved it immediately. That was my public trace. That was the kind of evidence that didn't require trust. It required only eyes. As I slipped my phone back into my pocket, someone slid into the seat across from me. "Don't turn around," a voice murmured. "You'll make it obvious." I looked up. Tessa Bloom, my cousin, photographer, the only person in our family who could make a living by noticing what other people missed. She sipped her coffee like she'd always been there. "You look like a man trying not to look like a man doing something," she said. I kept my face neutral. "I'm having lunch." "Sure," she replied. "And I'm the moon." I didn't answer. Tessa glanced toward the corner table without moving her head. "That her?" "Yes." "And that's—" She let the question hang. "Grant Keller," I said. Tessa's mouth tightened. "That's not a vendor dinner." "No." She studied me for a moment. "Are you okay?" "I'm fine," I said. "That's the second most dangerous thing you say," she replied. "What's the first?" "I'm calm." Tessa exhaled softly through her nose. "So what are you doing here, Nolan?" I looked at my coffee. Collecting clarity. She nodded slowly, then leaned in a fraction. "I saw her arrive," she said, voice quiet. "Not today. Last week, same man, same posture, like she wanted to be seen but not caught." "Where?" I asked. "10th floor lobby," she said. "I was shooting headshots for someone. She walked past like I wasn't there." Tessa's eyes sharpened. "I'm not taking sides," she added, "but I'm not blind." "I'm not asking you to take sides," I said. "Good," she replied, "because sides are messy. Proof is clean." She tapped the edge of my phone with one finger. "You saved it," she said, not asking. "Yes." Tessa sat back, sipping her coffee again. "Elise is going to try to control the story," she said. "That's what she does." "I know," I said. "And you?" she asked. I watched Elise laugh at something Grant said, watched her touch his sleeve for half a second, then pull back, as if she'd remembered the world was watching. "I'm going to control the record," I said. Tessa's expression softened just slightly. "Okay," she said. "Then do it right." I nodded once, because doing it right was the only way to survive a woman who made careers vanish with language. That evening, Elise came home with a glow again. She tossed her keys into the bowl by the door and called out, "Hey," like we were normal. I looked up from the couch. "Hey." She walked in and kissed me, full on the mouth this time. A little too long, like she was proving something. "You're sweet," she said. "Am I?" She smiled. "You're being quiet. It's nice." I held her gaze. "Long day?" "Very," she said. "I'm starving." "Soup?" I offered. She laughed. "Never again." I stood and went to the kitchen. I moved slowly, giving her room to talk if she wanted. She followed, leaning against the doorway. "We might have to attend the office holiday party together this year," she said casually. "We always attend together," I replied. "Not like this," she said. "They want couples on camera, for the culture post." "For the culture," I repeated. Elise rolled her eyes. "Don't start." "I'm not starting." She stepped closer, lowering her voice. "I need you to be present," she said. "No weird moods, no sulking. People notice." People notice. That mattered to her more than anything. I nodded. "I'll be present." "Good," she said, relieved. Then she kissed my cheek again, like a stamp. And as she turned away, her phone buzzed in her back pocket. She didn't pull it out. But I saw the corner of the screen light up through the fabric. And I saw the name again. Grant. I didn't say anything. I didn't ask. I let her go to the bedroom and close the door. Then I sat at the kitchen table and opened my paper ledger. Date, time, claim, proof, I wrote. Day 3, Elise claims exhaustion, culture post, couples on camera, proof, tagged story saved, date stamp visible. I stared at the sentence. Then I added one more line beneath it. Next step, stay lawful, stay quiet, stay exact. Because that was the only way to win against someone like Elise. And not with rage, not with pleas, with 1,000 small truths delivered like paper cuts until her social scaffolding collapsed. And somewhere deep inside me, beneath the calm, something colder than anger began to form. A plan that didn't need her permission, a plan that didn't need her confession, a plan that ended with ink and silence. Day 4 started with Elise acting like nothing had happened. That was her favorite trick. If she treated a problem like it didn't exist, most people eventually agreed to stop seeing it. She'd used it at work for years. A complaint becomes a misunderstanding. A warning becomes a coaching moment. A lie becomes a miscommunication. In the kitchen, she moved with that same practiced ease. Coffee, toast, a quick glance at her phone, face tilted away from me like she was guarding a flame. I watched her hands more than her face. Her nails were freshly done, a pale, expensive color, the kind of detail she pretended not to care about. "You're staring," she said without looking up. "I'm awake," I replied. She smiled faintly, like I was the problem, but also the entertainment. "I've got a long day. Don't start something." "I'm not," I said. "What time are you home?" Elise's eyes flicked to me. "Why?" "Planning," I said again. She exhaled, already annoyed by the existence of questions. "Late," she said. "HR leadership, vendor follow-ups, you know?" I nodded once. Elise took that nod as agreement, no, as surrender. She kissed my cheek, picked up her bag, and walked out the door humming again. When the door clicked shut, the condo felt quieter than it should have. Not peaceful, just empty in a way that highlighted what Elise filled when she was home. Control, noise, air. I stood at the kitchen counter and looked at my phone. The lock screen preview screenshot from day 2 sat in my gallery like a loaded coin. I hadn't shown it to anyone. I hadn't even looked at it more than twice. Evidence didn't gain strength from attention. It gained strength from context. Today, I needed context. I opened our shared digital calendar on my laptop. Elise and I had used it for years: doctor appointments, family birthdays, travel plans, maintenance visits, and anything Elise wanted to prove she was organized. Lately, it had become cluttered. Not naturally cluttered, strategically cluttered. Every day had blocks with vague titles that sounded legitimate but meant nothing. Leadership sync vendor touchpoint strategic alignment. Workstream review. A calendar could be a plan. It could also be camouflage. I scrolled through the week and looked for what didn't fit. On Thursday night, I saw it. A block labeled leadership dinner from 7 to 10 p.m. At the same time, she'd accepted a meeting invite in a shared team calendar that still synced to our view, something she'd forgotten to disconnect. The invite header read, Culture Post-Planning Session, 7:30 p.m. 2 places at once, 2 events that couldn't exist together. My stomach tightened, but not in a dramatic way, more like a seatbelt pulling during a sudden stop. I clicked into the event details. The leadership dinner block had no location, no attendees, no notes, just a blue rectangle floating there like an excuse. I clicked into the other invite. It had a location, the 10th floor conference room. It had a list of attendees. It had an agenda attached. Elise had tried to drown the truth in professionalism. I didn't argue with the calendar. I treated it like an audit trail. I exported the week view into a PDF, clean, legal, normal, a file any spouse could create without needing anyone's password. Then I took a screenshot of the conflict header, the part that showed the impossible overlap in a single line. No interpretation required. I named the file with a date, like I always did at work. Week view day forward PDF. Then I printed it. Not because I needed paper in 2026. Because paper had weight. Paper could be signed. Paper could be placed in a sleeve and stamped if needed. Elise lived by digital stories. I trusted paper. I set the printout on the table and stared at it for a long moment. There was a time when seeing a contradiction like this would have pushed me into an emotional spiral. I would have confronted, demanded, pleaded. But Elise didn't respect feelings. She used them. So I did what she couldn't stand. I stayed calm. I took a pen and circled the overlapping times on the printout. Then I wrote today's date in the margin and signed my initials beneath it. It wasn't a legal requirement, it was a habit. A way of telling my future self, This existed on this day, and I saw it. The first page of the calendar proof went into a clear sleeve. I labeled the sleeve with a sticky note. Day 4, calendar overlap. Then I slid it into the back of a drawer Elise never opened, behind an old set of manuals for an appliance we didn't use. The safest place for evidence in a marriage wasn't a safe. It was boredom. That night, Elise came home later than she'd implied. By the time she walked in, it was nearly 11. Her cheeks were flushed from cold or alcohol. Her smile was a little too bright, her steps a little too light. She tossed her keys into the bowl and leaned against the wall like she'd run a marathon. "Long day," she announced. I was on the couch, laptop open. A compliance training module paused on the screen to make me look busy. "Sounds like it," I said. Elise kicked off her shoes and walked toward the kitchen. "I'm starving," she said, opening the fridge. "You said dinner," I replied. She paused. Then she laughed, casual. "Dinner was early. I'm hungry again." "What was it?" "A salad," she said too quickly. Elise hated details when details created timestamps. I closed my laptop and looked at her. "Where was the dinner?" She turned, eyebrows raised. "Nolan, seriously?" "I'm curious," I said. "No, you're not," she snapped. "You're doing that compliance thing where you pretend you're just curious while you build a case." I smiled faintly. It's almost like I do it for a living. Elise's eyes flashed. Then she smoothed her face. "You're being paranoid," she said, walking toward me. "Work is busy. People have dinners. Vendors exist. The world doesn't revolve around your anxiety." My anxiety? Her favorite word when she wanted to shrink me. Elise sat beside me on the couch, close enough that her perfume filled my lungs. She rested a hand on my knee like she was grounding me. "You need to stop tracking me," she murmured. "I'm not tracking you," I said. "You are," she insisted softly. "You're watching my phone. You're asking questions. It's controlling." There it was again. Control. I turned my head and met her eyes. "If I were controlling," I said, "you'd have fewer choices." Elise's smile twitched. "That's a weird thing to say." "I'm tired," I replied. She studied me, then leaned in and kissed me as if kissing could erase suspicion. Her phone buzzed again. She didn't move, but her body tensed. I didn't look at her pocket. I didn't reach for anything. I let the silence stretch. Elise finally stood, annoyed. "I'm going to shower," she said. "Try not to spiral while I'm gone." She walked away with the kind of calm cruelty that worked on people who still wanted to be loved by her. I waited until the bathroom door shut. Then I opened my phone and updated the Notes app. Day 4. Elise labels questions as controlling, uses anxiety framing. I didn't add emotion, I didn't add commentary, just the pattern. Because patterns were how Elise fell, not because she cheated, because she couldn't stop controlling the story even when the story was collapsing. By day 6, Elise had adjusted. That's what skilled liars do. They don't stop lying, they refine. Her phone stayed face down more often. Her calendar got messier, filled with vague blocks that looked like work but behaved like cover. She started dropping small, concerned comments about me into conversations like breadcrumbs. "You seem quiet. Are you sleeping okay? You've been stressed lately." She didn't say it with cruelty. She said it like care. It was professional sabotage disguised as love. I let her. Because every time she tried to frame me, she revealed what she feared. A record. And a record was exactly what I was building. That Friday, I had lunch on campus again. Not because I wanted to see Elise, because I wanted to see what she thought was safe. Campus cafes were full of people who believed no one noticed them. Vendors flirting with employees, managers gossiping near the pastry case, HR staff pretending they didn't judge everyone. I bought coffee and sat near the window again, same posture, same neutrality. 10 minutes later, Elise walked in. This time, she wasn't alone. Grant Keller followed 2 steps behind her, carrying himself like the room should thank him for arriving. He wore a blazer, open collar, watch gleaming. He smiled at the barista like charm was currency. Elise didn't touch him. She didn't need to. Their rhythm did it for them. Inside jokes, shared glances, the easy closeness of people who had already crossed lines privately. They stood in line, leaning close as if the cafe was loud. It wasn't. Elise laughed, hand briefly brushing his forearm, then withdrawing like she'd remembered the world still existed. Grant said something, and Elise tilted her head, smiling at him the way she rarely smiled at me now. Not a polite smile, not a social smile, a hungry one. I looked away before my face could betray me. Then my phone buzzed. I didn't even have to open the notification to know what it was. A social ping. The kind that came when a venue posted a story and tagged the same people who always wanted to be seen. I opened it anyway. The cafe's official page had posted a quick video, a slow pan of the lunch crowd, cute music over it, a caption about community. And there, in the corner, Elise and Grant sat at a table, close enough to share heat, far enough to pretend it wasn't intimacy. Date stamp at the top. Perfect. I saved it immediately. Screenshot, then the permalink. I didn't trust posts to stay. A second later, someone slid into the chair across from me like the world had assigned her as my witness. Tessa Bloom. She wore a black coat and a camera strap around her wrist. She looked like she'd stepped out of a photo that didn't care about flattering angles. "You're consistent," she said quietly. "I like consistency," I replied. Tessa glanced toward Elise without turning her head. "She's sloppy today," she murmured. "She thinks she's safe," I said. Tessa's eyes sharpened. "She's acting like she wants to be seen," she added, "but only by the right people." Grant laughed loudly at something Elise said. He leaned back like he owned space. Elise leaned in like she wanted to be owned in secret. Tessa sipped her coffee. "Have you told anyone?" she asked. "No." "Good," she said. "People ruin evidence with opinions." I nodded. Tessa leaned closer, voice low. "I saw her in the 10th floor lobby last week again," she said. "Same guy. They were waiting for an elevator." She stood too close. He touched her shoulder like he was guiding her. "Did anyone else see?" I asked. Tessa's gaze flicked toward the cafe entrance. "Facilities supervisor," she said. "Older guy, doesn't look up much, but he did that time. Miles Rowan." I didn't know his name yet, but I knew the role. Neutral witness, the kind of person who hated drama enough to tell the truth just to end it. Tessa tapped my phone lightly. "Save what you need," she said. "Then leave. You don't want your face near their routine too often." "I'm not here for them," I said. Tessa's mouth curved faintly. "Sure," she replied. "You're here for your future." She stood, adjusted her strap, and left without another word. I watched Elise for a moment longer. Then I stood and walked out, coffee half finished. I didn't look back. Elise wanted attention. She didn't get it. Not from me. That afternoon, I drove home through a parking garage I'd used 100 times. The condo garage had a small kiosk that printed entry receipts if you requested them, mostly used by guests or anyone tracking visits. Elise had mocked it once, calling it paranoid. Today, I took one. The small slip of paper felt stupid in my hand. That was the danger of household-level evidence. It looked mundane. It looked weak, until you aligned it with everything else. I parked, went upstairs, and set the receipt on the kitchen table. Then I pulled out the newspaper Elise never read and laid it beside the receipt. I took a photo of both together. The date visible, the receipt time visible. It wasn't sexy evidence. It wasn't a secret recording. It wasn't a dramatic reveal. It was a timestamp. And timestamps were what broke liars. That evening, Elise came home earlier than usual. She looked pleased, a quiet shine in her eyes. "Guess what?" she said, tossing her bag onto the chair. "What?" I replied, not asking. "We're doing a couples culture post for the holiday party," she said, smiling. "Leadership wants it. It'll be fun." "Fun," I repeated. Elise rolled her eyes. "Don't be miserable. It's one night." "One night," I said. She walked toward me and hooked her arms around my neck. "You've been distant," she murmured. "Are you mad at me?" "No." "Are you sure?" she asked, voice soft, rehearsed. "Because you've been blank." I held her gaze. "I'm fine." Tension crossed her face. She didn't like that answer. It gave her nothing to work with. Elise stepped back and crossed her arms. "This isn't healthy," she said. "You need to talk." "I talk at work all day," I replied. "That's not what I mean," she snapped. "You're shutting down." I shrugged. "Maybe I'm tired." Elise stared at me like I'd insulted her personally. Then she smiled suddenly, too bright. "Maybe you should see someone," she said lightly. "You know, therapy, stress management." There it was again. Label me, pre-frame me. I smiled faintly. "Are you offering to book it for me?" I asked. Elise's smile tightened. "I'm trying to help." "Then stop diagnosing me," I said calmly. Her eyes flashed. "You're being defensive," she said. "I'm being clear." Elise stared, then turned away sharply. "I'm going to take a shower," she said. "Try not to do whatever this is." She walked out like she'd won something. but she didn't notice my eyes had dropped briefly to her purse. A small white slip of paper peeked out, folded, tucked near the zipper. A receipt. My receipt. I didn't grab it. Not yet. I waited until she was in the shower. Then I walked to her purse like I was moving through my own kitchen, like I belonged there, like this was normal, because it was my home. Inside the purse, I found the receipt folded into thirds. Pine and Ash Brasserie. The time matched the alert. The signature line had a name scratched across it in a sloppy hand. Not Elise's handwriting, Grant's. My pulse stayed steady. My hands didn't shake. I unfolded the receipt carefully and laid it flat on the table. Then I photographed it beside the newspaper again. Date, time, proof. I refolded it exactly the way I'd found it and slid it back into her purse. Elise stepped out of the shower 10 minutes later in a robe, hair wet, face clean. "Hey," she said casually, walking into the kitchen. "Did you move my bag?" "No," I said. She glanced at it anyway, suspicion quick but controlled. Then she smiled again, as if choosing peace. I smiled back, and in my notes app I wrote, Day 6, receipt found in Elise's purse. Pine and Ash. Signature not hers. Photo taken with date reference. Then I set my phone down, because the proof was stacking now, and Elise still thought she was untouchable. Day 7 brought the first real test, not of the evidence, of my restraint. Elise had a talent for pushing emotional buttons like she was playing an instrument. When she felt me slipping away, she didn't apologize. She escalated. She made herself the victim and me the threat. At breakfast, she acted unusually affectionate, touching my shoulder, smiling too much, laughing at nothing. By lunchtime, she had pivoted into cold distance. By dinner, she had turned sharp. "You're not present," she said, standing in the kitchen with her arms crossed. "You're here, but you're not here." "I'm here," I replied, calm. "No," she snapped. "You're plotting." I didn't look up from the dish I was washing. "Plotting what?" Elise scoffed. "I don't know. Something. You always do this. You go quiet and then you explode." "I don't explode," I said. Elise's eyes gleamed. "Not physically," she said, "but emotionally. You shut down, you punish, you make it impossible to talk." Punish. Impossible. Words that belonged in HR documentation. I turned off the faucet and dried my hands slowly. "What do you want?" I asked. "I want you to admit you're not okay," she said, stepping closer. "I want you to stop pretending you're fine when you're clearly spiraling." Spiraling again. I smiled faintly. "You like that word," I said. Elise's mouth tightened. "I like truth." "No," I said softly. "You like framing." Her eyes flashed. "Excuse me?" "You're building a story," I continued, still calm. "About me?" Elise stared at me like I'd slapped her. Then her face softened suddenly, like a switch flipped. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Listen to you." She shook her head and laughed, but it wasn't funny. "Nolan, this is paranoia." "Is it?" I asked. Elise stepped closer and put a hand on my chest. "We're married," she murmured. "I love you. Why are you acting like I'm some enemy?" "Because you are." But I didn't say that. Instead, I did something small, something the outline had demanded from me long before I understood why. I asked one simple question. "What time was the vendor dinner on day 1?" I asked. Elise blinked. "What?" "The vendor dinner," I repeated. "Pine and Ash. What time was it?" Her face shifted. She tried to keep the smile, but it faltered. "Why does it matter?" "Just answer." Elise exhaled sharply. "I don't know. 7, 8, late." "You said it was early," I said. Her eyes narrowed. "You're insane." "I'm calm," I replied. Elise stared at me, then turned away abruptly, grabbing her phone off the counter. "I'm not doing this," she snapped. "I'm not living with a man who interrogates me." Interrogates. Again. She stormed out of the kitchen, and a second later, her phone buzzed loudly in her hand. She swiped it away fast, like she was batting away a fly. But she didn't realize I wasn't watching her phone. I was watching her. Her reaction was the evidence, not the message. The next morning, Elise texted me from work. "Can we please talk like adults tonight?" A peace offer. Also a trap. A chance to get me to say something emotional, something she could later call unstable. I didn't reply immediately. When I did, I kept it plain. Sure. Then I printed 2 screenshots. One was the Pine and Ash receipt photo from day 6. The other was the merchant alert time from day 1. I laid them side by side on the table, just like my training taught me to do when comparing claims. Then I pulled up Elise's text from last night in my message thread, where she'd said dinner was early, and I compared it to the earlier lie where she'd implied near the office. I took one more screenshot. 2 alibi texts, 2 different tones, 2 different truths. I saved it with a date, and I wrote in my ledger, day 8. 2 versions of the same story now exist. Not dramatic, just fatal. By day 9, the pressure changed. It wasn't only me asking questions at home, it was the family. We had a family dinner planned for that night, a small gathering at my aunt's house. Elise usually loved those dinners because they gave her an audience that didn't know how dangerous she was. She could play charming wife, thoughtful professional, generous helper. But family dinners had one problem. They required timelines. Arrival times, departures, plans, stories, and stories were where Elise slipped. When we arrived, the house smelled like roasted chicken and garlic. Warm light, familiar voices, the clatter of plates. My relatives hugged Elise like she was a prize I'd won. Elise leaned into it, smiling, laughing, playing the role. Tessa was there too, sitting near the end of the table, quiet as always. She met my eyes briefly and gave the smallest nod. She wasn't here to help me. She was here to see the truth. Dinner started normal. Elise talked about culture initiatives. She talked about leadership alignment. She made work sound like a noble cause. My uncle asked, "So, Elise, are you coming to the holiday party with Nolan?" Elise smiled brightly. "Of course," she said. "We're basically required." "Required?" my aunt teased. Elise laughed. "It's a whole thing. Couples on camera, culture post. You know." I forked a piece of chicken and chewed slowly. Then I asked casually, like it meant nothing. "What time is it again?" I asked. Elise's eyes flicked to me. "What time is what?" "The holiday party," I said. "Start time." Elise smiled. 7. My aunt nodded. "Oh, that's nice." I took a sip of water. "And your leadership dinner is the same night?" I asked. Elise's smile froze for half a second. Tessa's gaze sharpened slightly. Elise recovered fast. "No," she said. "Different night." My uncle frowned. "You said you had a leadership thing that night, didn't you?" he asked, confused. Elise blinked. "Did I?" "Yes," he said, laughing. "You said you'd be late." Elise's laugh came out too sharp. "Oh, no, that was a different thing. Not leadership, vendor follow-up, but it's fine. It's all fine." She was talking too much. I reached into my jacket pocket, pulled out a folded paper, and set it on the table beside my plate like it was a grocery list. Elise's eyes dropped to it instinctively. It was the calendar overlap printout. I didn't open it, I didn't show it, I just let it sit there, a silent object with weight. Elise's face tightened. My aunt noticed the shift. "Everything okay?" she asked gently. Elise smiled too hard. "Yes," she said. "Nolan just likes schedules." I nodded. "I do," I said calmly. Elise's hand tightened around her fork. "He's been stressed," she added quickly. Work stuff. Work stuff. Again, the framing." My cousin across the table tilted his head. "Stressed? Nolan? That's new." Elise laughed. "Exactly," she said. "It's like he's not himself." Not himself. A perfect phrase for a future HR narrative. I didn't react. I lifted the folded paper slightly, tapped it once, and put it back down. Then I asked the second simple question. "What time did you get home on day 1?" I asked. The table quieted, just a fraction. My aunt's eyes widened slightly. My uncle looked awkward. Tessa didn't move at all. Elise's smile stayed in place, but her eyes turned sharp. "What is this?" she hissed softly, only for me. "I'm curious," I said, keeping my tone normal. You said dinner was near the office. I'm trying to remember." Elise stared at me like she wanted to kill me with her gaze. Then she laughed loudly, performing for the table. "Nolan, you are ridiculous," she said. "You want timestamps? Fine. I don't know. 10? 11? Late? Who cares?" I nodded slowly. "You said it was early," I said, still calm. The silence deepened. My aunt cleared her throat. "Let's not do this at dinner," she said gently. Elise's face softened instantly. "Of course," she said sweetly. "I'm sorry. Nolan just has his moments." Her moments. She'd made it mine again. I looked at Elise across the table and smiled faintly, the way I did when an audit finally revealed the fraud pattern. "I'm fine," I said. Elise's jaw tightened. Tessa took a sip of wine without looking away from her plate. And I knew two things, with absolute clarity. Elise was building a story about me for other people, and I was building a record about Elise for the world. The next morning, day 10, Elise kissed me goodbye, like the dinner never happened. She stood in the doorway with her coat on, smiling too warmly, eyes too steady. Her hand rested on my chest for half a second, an affectionate gesture with a corrective undertone, like she was patting down a wrinkle in her image. "Be good today," she said. "I'm always good," I replied. Her smile tightened. "Don't do the dinner thing again," she added softly. It was embarrassing. "For you?" I asked. "For us," she corrected, and then she was gone. The moment the door shut, the condo felt like it exhaled. I stood at the window and watched her cross the parking lot, heels clicking, posture perfect. She walked like a person who believed consequences were for other people. My phone buzzed. Not a merchant alert this time. A message from a coworker. "You okay?" I stared at it for a second, then typed back, "Why?" 3 dots appeared. Then the reply, "HR is asking questions." "About you." My chest didn't tighten. Not yet. My mind did something else first. It lined up patterns. Elise's words at dinner. Stressed, spiraling, not himself. Her little concern comments all week. The timing. I walked to the kitchen table, opened my laptop, and logged into my work email. I didn't rush. I didn't slam keys. I moved the way I moved when I was about to audit someone who thought they were invisible. There it was. A meeting invite labeled Wellness Check-In, 2 RPM. Organizer, Elise Hart. Attendees, me, Elise, and a junior HR rep named Lonnie. Location, a small conference room on the 6th floor, the kind with glass walls and low voices. I stared at the invite. Wellness check-in. Elise didn't do wellness unless she was weaponizing it. My phone buzzed again. Another message, different coworker. "Heard you got flagged. Everything cool?" Flagged. That word had weight at my company. It meant someone had put a mark next to your name. A mark that didn't disappear easily, even if it was baseless. I didn't reply yet. I opened the invite details, no agenda, no notes, just the title and the time. Elise was going to sit across from me and ask leading questions until I said something emotional. Then she'd smile sadly and write it down. I closed my laptop and sat still for a moment, letting the first real heat rise in my gut. Not heartbreak. Anger. The kind that wants to punch through walls and call it justice. I let it rise. Then I let it settle. Because Elise wasn't trying to hurt my feelings. She was trying to control the narrative. And the narrative only mattered if people believed it. I opened my drawer and pulled out the paper ledger. I wrote, Day 10, HR meeting invite, wellness check-in. Organizer, Elise. Then beneath it, inference. Smear plan existed before confrontation. Inference wasn't proof, but it was a warning. And warnings were where good cases started. At noon, I drove to campus. I didn't walk in looking angry. I didn't storm HR. I didn't demand anything. I walked in like a man with a routine and a job. The building smelled like coffee and printer toner. The lobby screens played a looping video about values. People smiled at each other like they weren't waiting for layoffs. I passed a group of HR staff near the elevator bay. 2 of them stopped talking the moment they saw me. Their eyes flicked away like they'd been caught mid-gossip. One of them, an analyst named Brent, forced a polite grin. "Hey, Nolan," he said, too cheerful. "How's it going?" "Fine," I replied. Brent's grin faltered slightly. "Busy day?" he added. "Always," I said. I walked on. I didn't confront. Confrontation was messy. I wanted clean. In the cafeteria, I spotted a man I trusted to give me information without drama. Marv, the payroll specialist who treated numbers like religion. He was stirring coffee at the condiment station, alone. I walked up casually. "Hey," I said. Marv glanced up, then lowered his voice instantly. "Dude," he said, "what did you do?" "I didn't do anything," I replied. Marv snorted. That's what everyone says right before they get fired. I kept my tone even. "What did you hear?" Marv looked around, then leaned in. "HR asked your manager if you've been volatile," he whispered, like emotionally volatile, like you've been having outbursts. Outbursts. I felt the click again, colder than anger. "Who said that?" I asked. Marv shook his head. "It's HR. They don't say. They just float it, like a balloon. See who grabs it?" A balloon, exactly. "Did my manager answer?" I asked. Marv shrugged. "He said you're quiet, said you do your job, but he sounded nervous." Of course he did. Everyone was nervous around Elise. I nodded once. Thanks, I said. Marv stared at me. Are you okay? He asked, softer now. I smiled faintly. I'm fine, I said. Marv's eyes narrowed. That's the dangerous answer, he muttered. I walked away, and as I moved through the cafeteria, I felt eyes on my back. Not curiosity. Appraisal, like people were checking for cracks. Elise had launched her first wave, not with proof, with implication. At 1:55 p.m., I stood outside the 6th floor conference room. The glass walls revealed Elise inside, sitting at the table with her legs crossed, posture relaxed. She wore a cream blouse and a sympathetic expression, like she was about to comfort a grieving employee. Lonnie sat beside her, younger, anxious, flipping open a notebook like it was a shield. Elise looked up and smiled when she saw me. Hey, she said warmly. Come in. I stepped inside and shut the door gently behind me. Lonnie gave me a tight smile. Hi, Nolan, she said. Hi, I replied, taking a seat across from them. Elise folded her hands on the table. This is informal, she began. We just wanted to check in. I'm checked, I said. Lonnie let out a small nervous laugh that died immediately. Elise's smile stayed. We've noticed you've seemed stressed, she said carefully. A little withdrawn. Noticed, I repeated. Elise nodded. And sometimes when people are under stress, they can react in ways that aren't healthy. I held her gaze. Is this about work performance? I asked. Elise's eyes flicked for half a second. It's about wellness, she said. We care about you. You don't, I said calmly. So let's be efficient. Lonnie's pen froze. Elise's smile tightened. Nolan, she said softly, I'm trying to support you. Then say what this is, I replied. Elise took a slow breath like I was the difficult one. There have been concerns, she said, about your emotional stability. There it was. Out loud, I nodded once. Concerns from who? Elise's lips curved slightly. I can't share sources, she said. Of course, I replied. Lonnie's eyes darted between us. Elise leaned forward, voice gentle. Have you been sleeping? Yes, I said. Any panic? Any intrusive thoughts? Elise asked. No. Elise's eyes softened, almost convincingly. Nolan, it's okay to admit you're struggling. I smiled faintly. Are you trying to get me to admit something? Elise paused. I'm trying to help you feel safe. I tilted my head. Safe from what? Elise's gaze sharpened for a moment, then softened again. From yourself, she said. I let the silence hang. Then I did what compliance training taught me when someone tried to steer a conversation. I asked for something concrete. Is there a complaint file? I asked. Elise blinked, then laughed gently. No, this isn't disciplinary. So there's no file, I said. Elise's smile flickered. Not at this time. Not at this time. A threat hidden inside professionalism. I nodded. Okay, I said. Elise watched me, waiting for emotion, waiting for a raised voice, waiting for me to prove her story true. I kept my hands on the table, palms down, relaxed. I have one question, I said. Elise's eyebrows lifted. Sure, she said, still smiling. Did you schedule this meeting before or after the family dinner? I asked. Lonnie's pen stopped entirely. Elise's smile froze for half a second. Then she laughed, a sharp little sound. What kind of question is that? She asked. A simple one, I replied. Before or after? Elise's eyes narrowed. Why would that matter? Because it tells me if you're reacting, I said calmly, or if you were planning. Elise leaned back slowly, her expression shifting from sympathetic to annoyed. Nolan, you're being paranoid, she said. And you're avoiding the question, I replied. Lonnie swallowed hard. Elise stared at me for a long beat. Then she smiled again, but it wasn't warm now. This is exactly why we're meeting, she said quietly. You're seeing threats where there are none. I nodded. So you won't answer. Elise's jaw tightened. I don't have to, she snapped, then caught herself. This is not about you interrogating me. Right, I said. It's about you diagnosing me. Elise's face hardened. We're done here, she said, turning to Lonnie. Make a note that Nolan declined support resources. Declined. Another word for a file. I stood calmly. Make a note of this too, I said, looking at Lonnie. I answered every question. Elise refused to answer one. Elise's eyes flashed. Lanny's hand trembled slightly as she wrote. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult. I didn't threaten. I simply walked out. And as the door clicked shut behind me, I felt something settle into place. The mid-story twist wasn't that Elise was cheating. It was that she'd built my collapse plan in parallel, before I ever confronted her, before I ever reacted. That meant the affair wasn't just indulgence, it was strategy. In the hallway, my phone buzzed. A message from a colleague named Petra, someone I'd worked with on several investigations. Heard HR asked about you. Want to talk? I stared at the message. Then I replied, Coffee, 5 minutes. Lobby. Petra met me near the lobby seating area, carrying 2 coffees like she'd already decided I needed one. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't perform concern. She just handed me the cup and sat. Okay, she said. What's real? HR launched a wellness check, I said. Petra's eyes narrowed. That's not normal, she said. Not unless they're laying groundwork. Exactly, I replied. Petra sipped her coffee. Who's behind it? She asked. I didn't say Elise's name, not yet, because names without proof were just gossip. Instead, I said, someone who wants me framed as volatile. Petra watched me for a long moment. And are you? She asked. I smiled faintly. No, I said. Petra nodded. Then you need a record, she said. I'm building one, I replied. Petra leaned in slightly. If HR is asking questions, it's because someone is feeding them language, she said. Listen for repetition. People repeat scripts. Repetition. Tessa had said the same thing in different words. I nodded. I'll listen, I said. Petra's eyes softened. Be careful, she added. If they want you to react, they'll poke. Let them, I said quietly. I'm not giving them that. That afternoon, I heard the repetition. I walked past a small group of managers near the elevator bay. They stopped talking when they saw me, then forced casual smiles. One of them, a project lead named Dustin, stepped forward awkwardly. Hey man, he said. You doing okay? I'm fine, I replied. Dustin nodded too quickly. Yeah, HR just said you've been under a lot of stress, he said, stumbling, like you've been having trouble managing emotions. It was almost word for word Elise's phrasing from the meeting. I smiled faintly. Who said that? I asked. Dustin blinked. HR, he said. Which person? I pressed gently. Dustin looked uncomfortable. I don't know, he said. They just mentioned it. Mentioned it. Balloon, I nodded once. Thanks, I said. Dustin hesitated, then blurted. They said you might be spiraling. Spiraling. There it was, exactly. I walked away without another word. And in my notes app, I wrote, Day 10. Dustin repeats phrasing. Trouble managing emotions, spiraling. Indicates script distribution. That line mattered more than any emotional argument I could have made. Because it wasn't just that Elise was cheating, it was that she was recruiting the workplace into her version of reality. And the only way to beat that was to replace the version with a record. That night, at home, Elise acted calm. Too calm. She cooked dinner, actual dinner, not soup, and poured wine like she was hosting a reset. I'm glad you came to the check-in, she said casually as she set down plates. I was worried. Worried, I repeated. She smiled. About you, she said, eyes shining with performance. I ate slowly. What were you worried would happen? I asked. Elise's smile tightened. That you'd keep internalizing, she said. That you'd get worse. Worse, I echoed. Elise's eyes flashed. Why are you copying me again? I like clarity, I said. Elise leaned back in her chair and studied me. Nolan, she said softly, this can go badly for you if you keep acting like this. There it was, the threat, finally uncloaked. I nodded once. Badly how? Elise's lips curved. People talk, she said. People notice. And when someone is unstable, they start to protect themselves. Protect themselves, meaning protect themselves from me. I set down my fork. Is that what you're doing? I asked calmly. Protecting yourself? Elise's eyes narrowed. I'm protecting us, she said. No, I replied softly. You're protecting your story. Elise's face hardened. What story? She snapped. I held her gaze. The one where I'm the problem, I said. Elise stared at me for a long beat. Then she laughed, cold and dismissive. "You're not well," she said. I smiled faintly. "Maybe," I replied. "Or maybe you're not as careful as you think?" Elise's jaw tightened. "What is that supposed to mean?" "It means," I said, standing up and clearing my plate, "that you should be careful about timelines." Elise's eyes widened slightly, then narrowed. "Are you threatening me?" she asked, voice sharp. I turned back and looked at her. "No," I said calmly. "I'm warning you." Elise stared at me like she couldn't decide whether to scream or smile. Then she smiled. "Okay," she said softly. "Good night, Nolan." She walked away, and I stood in the kitchen with my pulse steady, my hands clean, and my mind already moving to the next step, because the smear was out now, which meant the case had to become official, civil, clean, fast, within 30 days. The next morning, day 11, I scheduled a consult. Not with anyone connected to Elise, not with anyone flashy. A small civil attorney's office with a receptionist who sounded bored, which I took as a good sign. I didn't tell them about feelings. I told them about records. And when I hung up, I wrote one more line in my ledger. Day 11, civil consult scheduled. No threats, no drama, just paper. Then I looked at the drawer where the signed divorce papers waited. They felt heavier now, not because I was scared, because I was certain. Day 12 was quiet, not peaceful. Quiet like a building right before the fire alarm. Elise moved through the condo with extra care, like she was adjusting her steps to avoid triggering me, or to avoid giving me angles. She talked less. She smiled more. She touched me in small, almost automatic ways. A hand on my shoulder as she passed, a kiss on my cheek that lasted half a second longer than needed. She wanted me to believe she still owned the room. I let her, because the more she performed normal, the more her slip stood out. That afternoon, I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and opened the shared calendar again. Elise was at work. The condo was mine for an hour. I looked at the week view like I was reading a map of lies. Blocks had multiplied since day 4. Same vague titles, different times, stacked like bricks. But one thing hadn't changed. The impossible overlaps. I scrolled to the night she claimed she had leadership alignment. Then I cross-checked a synced invite from a vendor portal calendar that still appeared in our shared view, another thread Elise had forgotten to cut. The invite header was blunt, Pine and Ash, 7:30 p.m., table reserved. It wasn't in her personal calendar details, it was in the shared stream that had leaked into ours. I didn't click into anything private. I didn't hack. I didn't search her inbox. I did what any spouse could do. I captured what the shared system already showed me. I exported the calendar week view as a PDF again, clean, lawful. Then I took a screenshot of the conflict header, the part that displayed 2 events occupying the same time slot in one line. This was my second calendar artifact, and I treated it like a second witness statement. Print, sign, sleeve, date label. Then I put it with the first. The drawer behind the appliance manuals was becoming a quiet vault. When I slid it shut, my phone buzzed. A merchant notification, not Pine and Ash, a different place. Alert. Card present purchase, 74-18, Meridian Gym Juice Bar. Meridian Gym was across town. Elise didn't go there, not officially. I stared at the alert for 2 seconds, then set the phone down and breathed once, slow. Then I wrote it in the ledger. Day 12, Meridian Gym Juice Bar. 74-18, alert received 4:11 p.m. I didn't add commentary, but in my head, I pictured Elise laughing, handing over my card like it was her spare identity. The mistake wasn't the cheating. The mistake was the paper trail. That evening, Elise came home earlier than expected. She walked in with a bright smile and a grocery bag full of things she didn't normally buy. Fresh herbs, expensive bread, a bottle of wine with a label that screamed apology dinner. She was staging. "Hey," she said warmly. "I thought we could make something nice tonight." I looked up from the couch. "Why?" Elise's smile faltered for half a second. "Because," she said, drawing the word out, "I love you." I stood slowly and walked to the kitchen. "What are we making?" I asked. "Pasta," she said quickly. "Something simple." She set the bag on the counter, then stepped close and kissed me, lingering. Her hand slid up my arm like she was testing if I was still hers. "You've been distant," she murmured. "I hate it." I met her eyes. "You hate not controlling it," I said quietly. Elise's smile froze. Then she laughed like I'd made a joke. "You're impossible," she said, turning away to rinse herbs. I watched her shoulders, the tension in them, the slight stiffness that wasn't there when she was actually relaxed. Her phone buzzed in her pocket. She ignored it. Then it buzzed again. She glanced toward the hallway as if deciding where to retreat. I didn't say anything. I let the silence stretch. Elise sighed dramatically and pulled the phone out. She didn't look at it openly. She angled it away from me, thumb moving fast. A lock screen preview flashed before she swiped it away. Grant and the word tonight. Elise slid the phone into her pocket and smiled at me. Wine? She asked. I poured it. Not because I wanted it, because I wanted her to think I was settling. She drank quickly. Too quickly. Elise didn't drink fast unless she was nervous or excited. She started talking about her day, work gossip, culture, nonsense, a story about a junior employee crying in her office. She painted herself as compassionate, patient, burdened, the hero of her own story. I nodded in the right places. Then she said it, casual but loaded. People are worried about you, she said, stirring pasta water like it was normal. Who? I asked. Elise shrugged. It's just feedback, she said. You've been cold. It's not like you. Feedback, I repeated. Elise smiled. See, she said. You copy words when you're stressed. I copy when I'm listening, I replied. Elise's smile tightened. You don't listen, she said softly. You collect. I held her gaze. And you curate, I replied. For a moment, the kitchen felt smaller. Elise turned away, jaw tight. I'm trying, she said. Are you? I asked calmly. She slammed the spoon down a little too hard. Yes, she snapped. I'm trying to fix us. I leaned against the counter. How? I asked. Elise's eyes flashed. By getting you help, she said. There it was again. Help. A leash disguised as kindness. I nodded. And what are you doing about yourself? I asked. Elise stared at me, then she smiled. What do you mean? You've been busy, I said. Late nights, dinners, charges on my card. Elise's face stiffened. Are you accusing me? She asked, voice sharp. I'm noticing, I said. Elise's smile vanished. Nolan, you are not going to make this into some paranoid fantasy, she hissed. I didn't raise my voice. Then answer one date, I said calmly. Just one. Elise's eyes narrowed. Which date? She asked. The Pine and Ash dinner, I said. Day 1. What time did you arrive? Elise's lips parted. Then she laughed, loud and cold. I don't know, she said. I don't keep a spreadsheet of my life like you. But you keep files on people, I replied softly. That landed. Elise's face went still, her eyes hard. Careful, she said. I smiled faintly. I am, I replied. Her phone buzzed again. She grabbed it fast and walked out of the kitchen, speaking over her shoulder. I'm going to take this, she said. I watched her disappear into the hallway. Then I did the thing I'd been avoiding for days. I checked my shared account notifications. Not her accounts, not her phone, mine. And there it was. A rideshare receipt charged to my card, time-stamped during the hour she'd claimed she was in leadership alignment. Pickup location, Meridian Gym. Drop-off, a boutique hotel lobby bar downtown. I stared at the receipt details. This was bigger than flirting. This was routine, and it was on my account. I saved the receipt screenshot immediately. Then I opened my ledger and wrote, Day 12, rideshare receipt on my account. Meridian Gym to hotel lobby bar. I didn't add what it meant. The document spoke for itself. Elise returned 5 minutes later, phone back in her pocket, smile reset. Sorry, she said. Work. I nodded. Of course, I replied. Elise stared at me like she was trying to find out what I knew. Then she smiled brightly. Let's eat, she said. We ate pasta in silence. Elise tried to fill it with small talk. I let her, because silence made people talk, and talk made people slip. On day 13, I went to the lease office. Not because I needed to, because the outline demanded a neutral witness angle, and I'd heard enough from Tessa to know where to find it. Our building had a small lease office in the lobby level, run by people who lived on routine and paperwork. They kept logs for everything. Package pickups, key replacements, maintenance visits. Elise had claimed she'd never been there. That meant she probably had. I walked in around 2 p.m. when the lobby was slow. A leasing agent looked up from her desk. Hi, she said. How can I help? I'm looking for the key return log, I said. She blinked. For what? Our spare set, I said calmly. I want to confirm when it was returned. The agent hesitated. Are you on the lease? She asked. Yes, I replied. Nolan Hart. She typed my name, glanced at her screen, then nodded. Okay, she said. We can show you the entry. She pulled out a binder and flipped through pages with practiced speed. Then she paused. Her finger landed on a line. Here, she said, turning the binder toward me. A neat entry in ink. Elise Hart, spare key return, day 13. Not day 13, an earlier date. I looked closer. It was day 11. Time, 6:12 p.m. I kept my face still. Can I photograph this? I asked. The agent hesitated. We usually don't. I'm on the lease, I said calmly, and it's our key. She studied me for a moment, then sighed. Fine, she said. Just the line. I took out my phone and photographed the log entry, making sure the date and time were visible. Then a man stepped into the office doorway, carrying a stack of work orders. Older, broad shoulders, tired eyes. He glanced at the binder, then at me. The agent said, Miles, can you grab the maintenance folder from the back? Miles nodded and turned to leave. His name settled into my mind like a confirmation. Miles Rowan. He wasn't part of Elise's world. He wasn't part of mine either. He was part of the building. Routine, paper, time. As Miles passed me, I said casually, Busy day? He grunted. Always. I smiled faintly. You ever see people rushing keys in like it's urgent? I asked. Miles paused, half a second. He looked at me, then at the binder. Then he said, low and flat. Sometimes. He didn't say more, but he didn't deny it either. I nodded. Makes sense, I said. Miles walked out without another word. That was enough. I didn't need him to testify. I needed him to exist as a neutral witness who had noticed something. If things escalated, he would remember, because routine people remember what breaks routine. Back home, I placed the key log photo into a clear sleeve and labeled it. Day 13, lease office key return log, 6:12 p.m. Then I took a photo of the sleeve next to the kitchen clock, the time visible. Redundant? Maybe. But redundancy was how you beat someone who edited stories for a living. That night, Elise came home smiling again. She kissed me, asked about my day, acted sweet. Then she said, casual, I didn't stop by the lease office this week. I looked at her. She smiled, innocent. Just saying, she added, because you've been weird about logs and stuff. There it was. She was checking what I knew. I smiled faintly. Okay, I said. Elise's eyes narrowed. Okay, she repeated. Okay, I said again. Elise stared at me like silence was an insult. Then she laughed sharply and walked away. And I knew I was close, because Elise only laughed like that when she felt a threat she couldn't name. Day 14 felt different the moment I walked into the building. Same glass, same badge scanners, same corporate posters about values. But people's eyes moved faster now. Conversations paused half a beat too late. Smiles held too long, as if they were checking whether I'd earned them. Elise's balloon had drifted farther than she'd let on. I rode the elevator up with two managers from a different department. They spoke softly until the doors closed, then went quiet like a switch had flipped. One of them kept glancing at the security camera in the corner as if it were listening. When the doors opened on my floor, the taller manager cleared his throat. Hey, Nolan, he said, forcing a friendly tone. Everything okay? I didn't break stride. Why wouldn't it be? He blinked, then smiled awkwardly. Just checking. HR mentioned you've been under stress. HR mentions a lot, I said. The other manager shifted uncomfortably. They said you've been withdrawn, he added. Withdrawn. Another script word. I stopped at my desk, set down my bag, and looked back at them. Did they say I was dangerous? I asked, calm. Both men stared at me, startled. No, the taller one said quickly. No, nothing like that. Then stop acting like I'm a wildfire, I said. I'm a spreadsheet. They didn't laugh. They didn't know whether they were allowed. They nodded, mumbled something, and walked away. I sat down and opened my laptop. A compliance inbox is a funny thing. People send you problems because they want you to fix them, but they also resent you because fixing them means exposing them. It's a job built on quiet enemies. Elise was used to controlling enemies. She had no idea what to do with someone who didn't announce himself. By noon, the first real sign hit. A meeting invite popped into my calendar. Manager touchpoint, 3:00 p.m. Organizer, my manager, Ken. No agenda. Ken never scheduled touch points unless HR had pressed him. I stared at the invite, then accepted it. Not because I wanted to go, because I wanted to hear the script in its purest form, when someone else said Elise's words out loud. Ken's office was small and bright, with a plant in the corner that looked like it had given up. Ken himself looked like he'd been sleeping badly for weeks. When I walked in, he stood and gestured to the chair across from him. "Hey," he said, trying to sound normal. "Hey," I replied. Ken shut his door, then sat down slowly. He didn't meet my eyes right away. "How's everything going?" he asked. "Fine," I said. Ken nodded too quickly. "Good," he said. "Good. So, this is informal." Informal. Same word Elise had used in her wellness ambush. I leaned back slightly. "Okay." Ken took a breath. "HR reached out," he said. "Just a check-in. They said they've noticed you seem under pressure." Under pressure. I watched his face. "Who is they?" I asked. Ken hesitated. "Elise," he admitted. I let the name land without reaction. Ken quickly added, "Not in a personal way, obviously. It's professional." "Is it?" I asked calmly. Ken rubbed his forehead. "Look, Nolan, I'm not accusing you of anything," he said, "but HR asked me if you've been having trouble managing emotions." Trouble managing emotions. Exactly. I nodded once. "And what did you tell them?" Ken looked relieved to answer something concrete. "I told them you're steady," he said. "You're quiet, but you're steady. You don't blow up." I smiled faintly. So they asked the wrong guy. Ken's mouth twitched. "I told them you're not a problem," he said. "But Elise said you've been acting strange at home." "At home." Ken said it like he wanted to pretend he hadn't. I kept my voice flat. "My marriage is not a workplace input," I said. Ken swallowed. "I know," he said. "I told them that." "Good," I replied. Ken studied me for a moment. "Are you okay?" he asked quietly. I held his gaze. "Do I look unstable?" I asked. Ken shook his head quickly. "No," he said. "Then stop letting HR narrate my life," I said. "I'm doing my job." Ken exhaled. "Okay," he said, relieved, like he'd just survived a meeting with a shark. "Okay, that's all." I stood. "If HR asks again," I said calmly, "tell them to put it in writing." Ken blinked. "That'll escalate." I smiled faintly. "So will lying." Ken didn't answer. He just nodded. When I walked out, I felt the case tighten. Elise had crossed a line. Not the affair line, the institutional line. She was using her workplace leverage to protect her private life, and she was doing it by trying to make me look unstable. That meant I couldn't win this privately anymore. I needed an official record, the kind Elise couldn't edit with charm. Day 15 brought the first cold shoulder that mattered, not from managers, from peers. At the coffee station, a woman I'd worked beside for 3 years, Jessa, poured creamer into her cup and didn't look up. "Morning," I said. She flinched slightly, then forced a smile. "Morning," she replied. She didn't ask about my weekend. She didn't joke about the printer always breaking. She didn't lean in for small gossip like she used to. She left quickly, cup in hand, eyes down. The moment she was gone, someone else stepped up. A guy named Owen from finance, friendly and loud on normal days. Today he was careful. "Man," he said, lowering his voice. "You good?" I looked at him. "You're the third person to ask that in 24 hours. Owen grimaced. "Yeah," he admitted. "HR's been, you know." "I don't," I said. "Tell me." Owen glanced around like the coffee station had microphones. "They're saying you've been spiraling," he whispered, "that you might be having personal issues." There it was again. Spiraling. I nodded slowly. "Did they say why?" Owen shrugged. "No," he said. "It's just vibes." Vibes. Corporate gossip's favorite costume. I gave him a small smile. "Thanks," I said. Owen hesitated. "You sure you're okay?" he asked again, softer. I leaned in slightly, voice calm. "If I ever become a problem," I said, "you'll get a memo. Until then, do your job." Owen stared at me, then laughed awkwardly and walked away. I watched him go and felt the next step settle in my mind like a stamp. I didn't need to defend myself with words. I needed to make Elise's tactics visible to someone who wasn't afraid of her, someone whose job was to record, someone who didn't care about her smile, Paula Venn, board secretary, minutes keeper, paper queen. On day 16, I found her the way you find anyone in a building like ours, by watching routines. Paula always ate lunch at 12:10, always, same small salad, same corner table near the windows, same stack of printed agendas beside her tray. She wasn't popular, she wasn't lonely either. She looked like a person who had decided long ago that work friendships were optional. I bought coffee and walked over casually. "Paula," I said. She looked up, eyes sharp behind thin frames. "Nolan," she replied. "What do you need?" No small talk. Perfect. "I need a procedural question," I said. Paula's expression didn't change, but her attention did. "Go on." "If someone is using HR as a narrative tool," I said calmly, "what's the cleanest way to create an official record that can't be rewritten later?" Paula set down her fork slowly. "That depends," she said. "On what?" I asked. "On whether you have documents," she replied. I smiled faintly. "I do." Paula's eyes narrowed slightly, not suspicious, just focused. "Then you submit them," she said. "Officially, to the proper channel." "Elise controls the channel," I said. Paula didn't blink. "Elise influences people," she corrected. "She doesn't control paper." I let that sit. Paula continued, voice flat. "If you want something on record, you need a meeting with minutes," she said. "A room with an agenda, a facilitator, a witness that isn't you." I nodded. "How do I do that without looking like I'm starting a war?" Paula's mouth curved slightly, the closest thing she had to a smile. "You're asking the wrong person," she said. "I don't care how you look. I care what is true." I leaned in a fraction. "If I submit evidence for minutes," I said, "can you log evidence received without commentary?" Paula studied me for a long moment. "Yes," she said, "if it's relevant." "It is," I replied. Paula's gaze sharpened. "Relevant to policy?" she asked. "Yes," I said. Paula nodded once. "Then bring me the policy page and the proof page together," she said. "Keep it short. Keep it clean." I didn't pull out my phone. I didn't show her anything in the cafeteria. I just nodded. "Okay," I said. Paula picked up her fork again. "One more thing," she added. "What?" I asked. "If you're trying to trap Elise with emotion," she said, "you'll lose." I smiled faintly. "I'm not," I said. "I'm trying to trap her with dates." Paula's eyes held mine for a beat. Then she nodded once, approving. "Good," she said. "Dates don't flinch." Grant Keller started appearing in my peripheral vision after that. Not every day, not in obvious ways, but enough that I could feel him checking where I stood in the social ecosystem. On day 16, as I left the cafeteria, I saw him near the lobby seating area talking to a procurement lead. He laughed loudly, then glanced toward me and held my gaze for half a second too long. His smile didn't reach his eyes. He knew I existed now, not as Elise's husband, as a variable. Elise would have told him I was harmless, quiet, withdrawn, spiraling. Grant looked at me like he wasn't sure. I didn't look away. I didn't scowl. I gave him the same bland, professional nod I gave anyone in the hallway. Grant's jaw tightened slightly. Then he turned back to his conversation, laughing too loudly again. A man who performed that hard was always hiding something, and hiding something meant leaving a trail. Percent do. That night, Elise came home smiling, carrying takeout bags like she was bringing peace offerings. "I got your favorite," she said brightly. "My favorite?" I asked. She rolled her eyes. "Don't do that. I'm trying." I watched her set the bags on the counter. "Where were you?" I asked. Elise's smile faltered. "Work," she said quickly. "Late." "Where?" I pressed, calm. Elise's eyes flashed. "What is this?" she snapped. "An interview?" "Just a question," I said. Elise exhaled sharply, then smiled again like she was choosing patience. "I was with leadership," she said. "A small dinner." "Which restaurant?" I asked. Elise blinked. "Why does it matter?" "Because you keep changing details," I said. Elise's face tightened. "You're obsessed," she said. "You're not well." I smiled faintly. "You keep saying that," I replied. Elise's eyes narrowed. "Because it's true." I stepped closer, voice still calm. "Then put it on paper," I said. "Say it in writing." Elise stared at me like I'd threatened her. I'm your wife, she hissed. I'm not writing some formal complaint about you. I nodded slowly. Interesting, I said. Elise's jaw clenched. What's interesting? That you'll spread it, I said calmly. But you won't sign it. Elise's face went still. Then she smiled, sharp, cold. You're going to regret this, she said softly. I shrugged. Regret is for people without a plan. Elise's phone buzzed in her pocket. She grabbed it fast, glancing down, then swiped it away and shoved it back like she'd been burned. I didn't comment. I just walked to the living room, sat down, and opened my laptop. Because tomorrow was day 17. And the outline had promised me the next piece would arrive not through her mouth, but through the shared systems she'd forgotten to lock. Elise could curate stories all she wanted, but she couldn't curate everything, not when she got careless. Day 17 delivered exactly what Elise's ego always delivered in the end. A receipt she didn't think mattered. It started mid-morning with a soft ping from my bank app while I was in a meeting. I didn't check it immediately. I waited until the call ended, until everyone had logged off, until my face didn't have an audience. Then I opened the notification. Alert. Card present purchase. 312.09s. Hotel Lumen Lobby Bar. Hotel Lumen. The boutique place downtown. The same drop-off point from the rideshare receipt on day 12. This wasn't Pine and Ash anymore. This wasn't a vendor dinner. This was a pattern with a location that kept repeating. Elise was not only cheating, she was repeating. People who repeat get predictable. Predictable people get recorded. I didn't screenshot the alert this time. I already had enough of those. Instead, I tapped into the transaction details and requested a printable summary, one of those plain, boring bank counter formats that looked like nothing and meant everything. The app generated a simple line item. Merchant name, date, time, amount. No story, no interpretation, just a fact. I saved it and printed it at work. Then I folded it and slipped it into my wallet like it was nothing. Because today, I wasn't gathering more feelings. I was building the final packet. After lunch, I walked down to the lobby and waited near the lease office corridor where the vending machines hummed. People passed without looking up. Most of them were carrying their own private disasters. Miles Rowan came through 10 minutes later, a clipboard in hand, moving like a man who had learned to ignore everything except broken pipes. Miles, I called. He stopped, eyes narrowing slightly as he recognized me from the lease office. Yeah? He grunted. I have a question, I said, keeping my tone low and casual. Miles looked at his clipboard like he wished it could answer for him. It's about the key return log, I said. That entry. Miles's jaw tightened. What about it? You remember who came in? I asked. Miles hesitated. Routine people hated being pulled into drama, but they also hated being lied to. It was her, he said finally, flat and simple. Your wife. What time? I asked. Miles exhaled like he was already regretting this. Same as the log, he said. Around 6. Was she alone? I asked. Miles's eyes flicked away for half a second, then back. No, he said. That single word hit harder than any confession. I kept my face still. Who was with her? I asked. Miles shook his head. I'm not doing names, he muttered. Not my job. That's fair, I said. One more question, then. Miles looked annoyed. What? Did he wait outside the office? I asked. Or did he come in? Miles stared at me for a moment, then said, He didn't come in. He waited by the mailroom. Mailroom, public space, routine traffic, cameras that were building owned, not miracle CCTV I could use. But I didn't need the camera. I needed the existence of the moment. Thank you, I said. Miles shifted his weight, uncomfortable. Look, he said, voice lower. I don't want trouble. You won't have any, I replied. I'm not asking you to fight anyone. Miles grunted. Good, he said, because I hate this stuff. I nodded. So do I. Miles started walking again, then paused and added, almost reluctantly, he had a nice watch. A nice watch. Grant. Miles didn't need to say the name, the detail did it for him. I watched him disappear down the corridor, then opened my notes app and typed one clean line. Day 17, Miles confirms. Elise returned key with a man. He waited by mailroom. Neutral witness. One sentence summary. Enough. That evening, Elise came home glowing. Not from love, from momentum. She tossed her bag on the chair, kicked off her shoes, and stretched like she'd had a good day. You're home early, she said, surprised. I was done, I replied. Elise smiled like she was pleased I'd returned to being normal. She came over and kissed me longer than usual, like she was sealing a deal. Holiday party planning is insane, she said, walking toward the kitchen. Everyone's stressed. Everyone, I repeated. Elise laughed. You know what I mean. She opened the fridge, pulled out water, then stopped and glanced back at me. You're not mad about that dinner thing, right? What dinner thing? I asked. Elise's eyes narrowed. Don't do that, she snapped lightly. You know, the family dinner, the weird questions. I'm not mad, I said. Elise visibly relaxed. Good, she said, because I'm trying to make things better. How? I asked. Elise smiled sweetly. By being patient, she said. By not reacting when you get obsessive. Obsessive, new word. Same goal. I nodded slowly. That's generous of you, I said. Elise grinned. See? She said. We're fine. I let that sit. Then I asked, calm as always, where were you today around 4:30? Elise froze, just for a blink. Then she laughed. Work, she said quickly. Where else? Hotel Lumen, I replied, still calm. Elise's smile vanished. What? Hotel Lumen, I repeated. Lobby bar. Elise stared at me like her brain was trying to decide whether to deny, attack, or flee. You're stalking me, she snapped. No, I said. You charged my card. Her face went pale, then flushed. That's a lie, she hissed. I smiled faintly. You say that a lot, I replied. Elise stepped toward me, eyes sharp. If you are accusing me of something, she said, voice low, you better be very careful. I'm not accusing, I said. I'm noticing. Elise's jaw clenched. You're sick, she spat. You need help. I nodded. Then put it on paper, I said again. Say it in writing. Elise's eyes flashed with real fear for the first time. Because Elise didn't fear confrontation, she feared records. You're trying to trap me, she said, voice shaking slightly. I'm trying to understand why you keep using my accounts, I replied. If you want freedom, you should pay for it yourself. Elise's mouth opened, then shut. She turned away sharply and grabbed her phone, tapping fast. Who are you texting? I asked calmly. No one, she snapped. Her phone buzzed immediately. She didn't look at the screen. She didn't need to. She already knew what it said. Elise shoved the phone into her pocket and turned back, face cold. This is done, she said. I tilted my head. What is? This, she said, gesturing between us. You and me? I can't live with a paranoid man. I nodded slowly. Okay, I said. Elise blinked, thrown off. She expected begging, anger, panic. Okay, she repeated. Okay, I said again. Elise's eyes narrowed. You don't get to be calm, she snapped. Not when you're ruining everything. I'm not ruining, I replied. I'm documenting. Elise stared at me, then laughed sharply and walked into the bedroom, slamming the door. I stood in the kitchen for a long moment, listening to her footsteps, the drawers opening, the closet sliding. She was packing something, not clothes, options. I didn't follow. Instead, I walked to my drawer, pulled out the already signed divorce papers, and set them on the table. Then I opened my laptop and started building the final one-page timeline. Dates, places, payments, no commentary. A neutral slideshow that didn't care about Elise's tears or Elise's titles. A ledger that told the truth without asking anyone to believe me. On day 18, I met with my attorney. He wasn't dramatic. He didn't promise revenge. He looked like a man who had seen 1,000 marriages die in the same quiet way. He flipped through the documents I brought. Printed receipts, calendar overlaps, rideshare timestamps, the key return log photo, the bank transaction summary. He didn't raise his eyebrows. He didn't gasp. He just nodded slowly. This is clean, he said. I want it clean, I replied. He tapped the bank line item. You're not trying to get her arrested, he said. No, I said. No prison. He nodded again. Good, he replied. Then we focus on civil leverage and professional consequences. She's HR. That matters. I watched him carefully. I don't want to use police, I said. You don't need to, he replied. Policy and credibility do the job. He slid a document across the table. We can file separation and serve, he said, or you can deliver papers privately. I want a public record, I said. The attorney studied me. Public how? He asked. I thought of Elise's holiday party, the culture post, couples on camera, her favorite arena. Office holiday party, I said. The attorney exhaled softly. That's risky, he said, but it's also effective. I don't want drama, I replied. I want silence. He nodded slowly. Then you need a controlled moment, he said. No shouting, no accusations, just documents. I smiled faintly. Exactly, I said. He scribbled a note. We'll prepare a filing receipt, he said. Civil, stamped, clean. I nodded. As I left his office, my phone buzzed again, a text from Elise. We need to talk. Tonight. I stared at it for a moment. Then I replied, sure, because the next phase wasn't gathering evidence anymore. It was setting the stage for the record, and Elise, without knowing it, was already walking into the room where her own story would die. Elise didn't talk that night the way a wife talks. She talked the way an HR chief talks when the door is closed and the outcome is already decided. She sat at the edge of our couch with her phone in her hand, leg bouncing once, then going still as she forced control back into her body. The condo lights caught the edge of her cheekbone and made her look like she'd been carved for boardrooms. I sat in the armchair across from her, hands relaxed, posture neutral. I didn't bring out documents. I didn't set traps on the coffee table. I let her have the first move. Elise stared at me for a long beat. This can't keep going, she said. Agreed, I replied. That word landed wrong for her. She expected resistance. She wanted a fight she could frame. Elise narrowed her eyes. I'm serious, she said. You've crossed a line. You scheduled a wellness ambush, I said calmly. You crossed first? Elise's jaw tightened. It wasn't an ambush, she snapped. It was a check-in. People were concerned. People, I repeated. Elise leaned forward. Yes, she said. People. You've been acting unstable. Unstable, I echoed. Elise's eyes flashed. Stop doing that, she hissed. Stop saying it, I replied. Her breath hitched once. Then she smoothed her face into something more strategic. I'm going to be direct, Elise said. If you keep accusing me, you are going to destroy your career. I'm not accusing, I said. I'm documenting. Elise scoffed. You think you're clever, she said. You think you can build some little file and win? I don't need to win, I replied. I need the truth to stand up without me. Elise stared at me like she'd never been forced to consider that kind of calm. You don't have proof, she said, voice low. I smiled faintly. Don't say things you can't verify, I replied. Elise's nostrils flared. She sat back and crossed her arms. Okay, she said. Let's play your game. What do you think you saw? I think you used my accounts, I said. I think you used my calendar view as cover. I think you repeated a location. Elise's face went hard. You're obsessed, she said. You're paranoid. Then put it in writing, I said. Elise laughed, sharp. You keep saying that like it's smart, she snapped. Why would I write anything when you're clearly spiraling? Spiraling again, like she couldn't help herself. I leaned forward slightly. Because you're already saying it to other people, I said. So either you believe it enough to sign it, or you don't. Elise stared at me. Then she changed tactics. Her voice softened, her eyes warmed, her shoulders relaxed into the posture she used when she wanted to look like the reasonable one. Nolan, she said quietly, I don't want us to hate each other. I didn't respond. Elise continued. We can fix this. We can do therapy. We can reset. Reset what? I asked. Elise's mouth tightened. Your distrust, she said. My distrust, I repeated. Elise's eyes sharpened again. Yes, she snapped. Because you're inventing things. I nodded slowly. Okay, I said. One question. Elise's expression flickered. What? What time did you return the spare key? I asked calmly. Her face went still. Why are you asking that? She said, too quick. Because you said you didn't, I replied. Then you said you did. Then you said it wasn't this week. Elise swallowed. I don't know, she snapped. I didn't. I nodded once. Okay, I said. Elise blinked, thrown off again. Okay, she repeated. Okay, I said. Then you won't mind if the building log says otherwise. Elise's eyes widened slightly, the first real crack. You went to the lease office, she said, voice tight. I asked about a key, I replied. Elise stood up fast. You are stalking me, she hissed. This is harassment. It's a binder, I said calmly. Harassment is a story. Elise paced once, then stopped, facing me like she was standing across a termination table. You're trying to ruin me, she said. You're trying to pre-ruin me, I replied. That's worse. Elise's lips trembled, then hardened. If you make this public, she said, voice low, I will end you. I held her gaze. You're HR, I said. You can try. Elise's eyes glittered. You don't understand what you're doing, she said. I understand timelines, I replied. Elise stared at me, breathing fast, then suddenly smiled like she'd found a new angle. Fine, she said. Let's talk about the holiday party. I didn't move. Okay. Elise sat down again, slower, as if she'd decided the threat needed to look reasonable. You are coming with me, she said. You will behave. You will not embarrass me. Why do you think you get to command that? I asked. Because it's my job, she snapped. Because optics matter. Because you don't get to destroy my image. I nodded once. Optics matter, I repeated. Elise leaned in. And if you act out, she said softly, I will make sure the company sees you as a risk. I smiled faintly. Then you're admitting the smear is deliberate, I replied. Elise froze. I kept my tone calm. You're not even denying the affair anymore, I said. You're negotiating exposure. Elise's eyes flashed. There is no affair, she snapped automatically, too late to sound believable. I stood up. Not aggressive, just done. Elise, I said, I'm not fighting you at home. Her gaze narrowed. What does that mean? It means, I said calmly, you'll get your stage. Elise's mouth parted slightly. What stage? I didn't answer. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself water, and let her sit in her own uncertainty. When I came back, Elise's voice was quieter, almost cautious. What have you done? She asked. I met her eyes. I've done what you taught me, I said. I prepared. Elise stared at me like she'd finally realized I wasn't bluffing. Then she stood, grabbed her phone and keys, and walked toward the door. Where are you going? I asked. Elise didn't turn around. To breathe, she said. The door slammed behind her. I stood in the living room alone, listening to the echo fade. Then I went to my drawer and pulled out the divorce papers again. Signed, dated, ready. I didn't sign them in anger. I signed them when the pattern became undeniable, when Elise's lies stopped being personal and started being institutional. I opened my laptop and finalized the one-page timeline. Dates, places, payments. No emotion, no accusations, no language Elise could twist, just the record. Then I texted one person. Paula Venn. Need a clean evidence received entry. Holiday party night. No commentary. Her reply came 5 minutes later. If it's policy relevant, I can log receipt. Keep it minimal. Minimal was my love language now. I printed 10 copies of the one-page timeline. I printed a single policy excerpt about conflict of interest and misuse of company-vendor relationships. Publicly available, not secret. Something any employee could reference. I placed each timeline copy into a clear sleeve with a date label. Then I put the sleeves into a thin binder with a simple cover. Fact summary. For record only. Elise had spent weeks trying to make me look like a man with emotions. On the holiday party night, I would show everyone I was a man with documents. The office holiday party was held in a rented ballroom that smelled like champagne and rented confidence. The company called it a celebration. Everyone else knew it was a networking event dressed up as joy. People wore their best faces, their best clothes, their best versions of themselves. Laughter traveled fast and meant little. Elise arrived with her hand on my arm like I was an accessory she'd polished. She wore a black dress that made her look untouchable. Hair perfect, smile ready, eyes scanning the room for threats and allies like she was counting votes. Remember, she murmured as we walked in, be normal. I'm always normal, I replied. Elise's fingers tightened on my arm. Don't do anything, she whispered. I looked at her. You mean don't do anything you can't control? Elise's smile didn't move, but her eyes sharpened. Exactly, she said. The ballroom was already full. The company's event MC, Jade Mercer, stood near the small stage with a microphone, laughing with a cluster of executives. She was good at reading energy and turning it into harmless noise. Paula Venn sat near the side, close to an AV table, a small folder in front of her, face unreadable. She didn't belong to the party crowd. She belonged to the record. Grant Keller was there too. Of course he was. He stood near the bar, blazer open, watch flashing under the lights, laughing too loudly with a procurement lead. He looked relaxed, but his eyes kept drifting toward Elise like she was a prize he was waiting to claim. Elise pretended not to notice. She was better at pretending than anyone I'd ever met. We moved through the room, shaking hands, accepting compliments, smiling like everything was fine. Elise performed flawlessly. That was the problem with her. She believed performance was reality. Halfway through the evening, Jade called for attention. All right, she said into the mic, bright and playful. Leadership wanted a quick culture moment. Nothing painful. Promise. People groaned and laughed. Phones came up. Everyone wanted content. Elise leaned toward me, voice low. Do not, she warned. I smiled faintly. I'm not doing anything, I said. Jade gestured toward the screen behind her. Before we do the couple photo, she said, we're going to do a quick fun prompt. You know, end-of-year vibes. A few people clapped. A few rolled their eyes. Jade continued. A couple of our leaders submitted little jokes. Safe ones. Nothing that will get me fired. Laughter rippled. Elise relaxed a fraction. She liked being included. She liked being elevated. Jade glanced down at her cards. Okay, she said. This one's from Elise Hart. A small wave of attention moved through the crowd toward Elise. People liked Elise, or feared her. Either way, they watched. Elise lifted her chin, smiling like a queen about to bless her subjects. Jade read, laughing, I need a new marriage. This one's trash. The room exploded with laughter. It was the kind of laugh that protected itself. People laughing so Elise would know they were on her side. Phones tilted slightly. Eyes flicked toward me, waiting to see if I'd take the humiliation like a good husband. Elise turned to me, smiling wide, enjoying the control of the moment. And that was when I did exactly what she never expected. I smiled back. Glad we finally agree on something, I said, loud enough for the people closest to hear. Then I reached into my inner jacket pocket and pulled out a slim envelope. Already signed divorce papers. Elise's smile froze. For half a second she looked confused, like she didn't understand the scene shift. Then the meaning landed, and her face tightened in a way she couldn't hide. I handed her the envelope gently, like it was a thank you card. Elise stared down at it, as if it might stain her skin. What is this? She hissed, voice low, too late to stay private. It's paper, I said calmly. The thing you can't charm. The laughter around us began to thin, dissolving into uncertainty. People sensed blood in the water, and corporate crowds love an invisible line becoming visible. Elise looked up at me, eyes sharp with panic. You're insane, she whispered. I smiled faintly. Put it in writing, I replied. Her jaw clenched so hard I thought her teeth might crack. Jade's voice, still on mic, faltered. Okay, so... I raised a hand slightly toward Jade, not asking permission, just signaling. She froze, eyes flicking between me and Elise. The projector screen behind her changed, not to a couple photo, to a clean white slide, black text, dates, places, payments, no commentary, no accusations. Just a one-page timeline, the kind that looked boring until you realized boredom was the point. A hush fell fast, like someone had turned down the volume on the room. Elise's head snapped toward the screen. Her face went pale, then flushed. Grant across the room stopped laughing mid-sentence. People leaned forward without meaning to. Eyes moved from the screen to Elise, then back. The room's hunger shifted from jokes to confirmation. Elise grabbed my wrist hard. Turn that off, she hissed. I didn't pull away. I didn't raise my voice. I looked at her and said evenly, No. Elise's nails dug into my skin. You're going to destroy me, she whispered. You did that, I replied. I just printed it. She shook her head quickly, eyes darting, searching for allies. Grant started moving, weaving through people toward us, face tight. The watch caught the light with each step like a signal. He stopped beside Elise, too close for innocence, and forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. What the hell is this? He asked, voice low. People around them heard anyway. Crowds always do. Elise snapped, Not now. Grant's gaze flicked to the screen, then back to me. His jaw tightened. You can't do this, he said. I looked at him. I didn't invite you into my marriage, I said calmly. But you kept showing up on my accounts. Grant's smile cracked. That's a lie, he snapped. I nodded once. Then you won't mind this being reviewed, I said. Paula stood up from her seat near the side, moving with the quiet authority of someone who didn't care about party optics. She approached the edge of the crowd, folder in hand. Jade, Paula said, voice clear, not loud. Pause the program. Jade, grateful for a procedural lifeline, stepped back from the mic. Paula turned slightly so enough people could see her. I'm logging receipt of submitted documents, she said, flat and professional. No commentary. Evidence received. She opened her folder and lifted a single sheet, her own record form. A simple line, a blank space for time and date. Elise stared at Paula like she'd been shot. "This is not a board meeting," Elise hissed. Paula didn't blink. "It's an event under company policy," she said. "I can log receipt. If you want to dispute, dispute with documents." Elise's mouth opened, then shut. For once, she had no language that didn't sound guilty. Grant took a step back, eyes scanning the room, realizing he was now visible in a way he couldn't manage. I slid my binder forward. Thin, clean, labeled. I didn't wave it. I didn't slam it down. I simply placed it into Paula's hands. Paula looked at the cover, then nodded once and wrote on her form. A pen scratching on paper, loud in the silence. Elise's voice rose, sharp, losing control. "This is harassment," she snapped. "This is malicious. He's unstable." The word unstable hung in the air like a bad smell. I looked at Elise, calm. "You've been saying that for weeks," I said. "Now you're saying it in public." Elise's eyes flashed. "Because it's true," she snapped. "Then sign it," I replied, still calm. "Put it in writing. Right now." The crowd shifted, a collective inhale. Elise froze, because she couldn't sign what she couldn't prove, and everyone felt that. Jade, still holding the mic, whispered, "Oh my God," under her breath, and it echoed through the speakers. Elise's hands trembled as she held the divorce envelope. Her eyes darted to Grant, then to Paula, then to the screen. She tried to smile again. One last performance. "This is a private matter," she said too loudly. "He's trying to embarrass me because he's insecure." "Insecure men beg," I said. I printed. Elise flinched as if the words had physical force. Then the room did what Elise feared most. It started to believe the documents more than her. A procurement director near the front squinted at the screen, then whispered to someone beside him. A manager's face tightened as recognition formed. Someone at the bar lowered their phone slowly, suddenly unsure whether recording was safe. Grant stepped closer to Elise again, but this time it looked like panic, not confidence. "Elise," he murmured, urgent. "We need to leave. Leave. Escape." Elise's jaw clenched. "No," she hissed back. "I'm not leaving my own event." But it wasn't her event anymore. It was the records. Paula finished writing, then raised her eyes. "Time logged," she said evenly. "Evidence received." The words were simple. They were devastating. Elise's face crumpled for half a second, then hardened into rage. She turned to me, eyes wet and furious. "You planned this," she whispered. I nodded once. "You planned yours too," I replied. "I just planned better." Elise shook her head violently. "You're ruining my life," she said, voice breaking. I leaned in slightly, calm enough to feel cruel. "You joked about needing a new marriage," I said, "so I gave you one less." Grant's hand touched Elise's elbow, trying to pull her away. Elise yanked free, then looked around the room one last time, searching for the loyal laughter she'd always relied on. It wasn't there, not anymore. The crowd had moved on from humor to calculation, from charm to risk. Elise could feel it. She could feel herself becoming radioactive. She looked back at me, lips trembling, and for the first time her voice dropped into something real. "What do you want?" she asked. I held her gaze. "The truth on paper," I said, "and my name out of your mouth." Elise stared, then looked down at the divorce envelope again. Her shoulders sagged slightly, the tiniest surrender. Then she turned and walked toward the exit, alone for the first time all night. Grant hesitated, then followed 2 steps behind, suddenly smaller without laughter. The room remained quiet until the doors closed. Jade stood frozen on stage, mic in hand, eyes wide. Paula slid the logged form back into her folder and gave me a single nod, like a clerk stamping a file. I picked up my coat calmly, not rushing, not gloating, and walked toward the doors. Behind me, the projector screen still showed the clean timeline. Dates, places, payments, no commentary, no epilogue. Just the record, hanging in the air where Elise's joke used to be. The hallway outside the ballroom felt colder than it should have, not because of air conditioning, because the noise behind me had turned into a vacuum, and vacuums make you hear your own footsteps like they're judging you. I walked past the coat check without stopping. My coat was already on. My hands were empty except for my phone and the faint sting on my wrist where Elise had grabbed me. That sting didn't hurt. It just confirmed she'd been real, and not a story I'd been telling myself. The elevator bank near the lobby was crowded with people leaving early, faces arranged into careful masks. They didn't want to look like they'd witnessed something. They wanted plausible deniability with a drink in their hand. I didn't look at anyone. I didn't need their faces. I needed the fact that they'd been there and the fact that they'd seen the record. A voice called my name from behind me, fast and tight. Nolan. I turned. Ken stood there, my manager, tie loosened, eyes wide like he'd just watched a car crash and realized he'd been inside the car the whole time. He stopped a few steps away, hands half raised like he wasn't sure whether to calm me or block me. "What the hell was that?" he asked. "A timeline," I replied. Ken blinked. You put divorce papers in her hand on the floor," he said, voice cracking with disbelief. "In front of everyone." "She wrote the joke," I said. "I wrote the ending." Ken looked past me toward the ballroom doors, where muffled noise was building again, people trying to decide what they were allowed to say. "HR is going to explode," he said. "Elise is going to." "Elise already did," I replied. Ken's jaw tightened. "You know how this looks," he whispered. I nodded. "It looks documented." Ken swallowed. "They're going to call this hostile," he said. "They're going to say you created an unsafe environment." I smiled faintly. "Then they'll put it in writing," I said. Ken stared at me like he was watching a stranger. "Nolan, are you okay?" he asked, quieter now. "There it is again," I replied. Ken's face fell. He recognized the phrase. The script Elise had been feeding him, now stuck in his mouth like a borrowed lie. I stepped closer, not threatening, just direct. "Ken," I said, "did you see me yell?" He shook his head. "Did you see me insult anyone?" I asked. Ken hesitated, then shook his head again. "Did you see me throw anything?" I asked. "No," he said. "Then stop acting like I'm the danger," I replied. "I brought paper to a room that runs on stories." Ken looked down, shame flickering in his eyes. "I need you to do one thing," I said. Ken looked up quickly. "What?" "When HR calls you," I said, "tell them you witnessed a controlled submission of documents. No aggression, no threats, just documents." Ken's throat bobbed. "They'll ask about Elise," he said. "Tell them what you saw," I replied. "Not what you heard?" Ken nodded slowly, like he'd just been given a life raft and wasn't sure he deserved it. "Okay," he whispered. I turned toward the exit again. Ken called after me, desperate. "Where are you going?" I didn't look back. "Home," I said, "to sleep." Because that was the most terrifying thing I could do now. Act like I was still normal. Outside, the city air hit my face like a slap. It smelled like car exhaust and wet pavement, and it tasted cleaner than the ballroom. I walked to the curb, opened a rideshare app, then paused. I stared at the screen for a long moment, thumb hovering. Then I canceled. Not because I didn't need a ride, because I didn't want Elise's money trail on my phone tonight. I wanted the last transaction to be hers, not mine. I started walking instead. 2 blocks down, I heard footsteps behind me. Fast, angled, determined. I turned before the person caught up. Grant Keller stood under a streetlight, face tight, blazer hanging open like he'd forgotten how to wear himself. "Stop," he said. I didn't move. "You're following me," I said calmly. Grant's jaw clenched. "You made a spectacle," he hissed. "You humiliated her." "I corrected a claim," I replied. Grant scoffed. "You're acting like some hero," he snapped. "You're not. You're just bitter." "Bitter men beg," I said. I printed. Grant flinched, like the phrase had a hook in it. He stepped closer. "You don't understand what you did," he said, voice low. "You don't know how this works." "I know exactly how it works," I replied. "People believe the cleanest story." Grant's eyes narrowed. "Elise is HR," he said. "She can bury you." I offered her a pen, I said. She didn't take it. Grant's nostrils flared. "She didn't cheat," he said, too fast, too desperate. "You're twisting—" I lifted my phone slightly. "You want to keep lying," I said. "Go lie where it can't be printed." Grant's mouth opened, then shut. He looked past me, scanning the street like he was checking for witnesses. He didn't want witnesses. He wanted control. "You think this ends tonight," he said softly. "It doesn't." "It ended before tonight," I replied. "Tonight was just the receipt." Grant's eyes hardened. "You're going to regret it," he said. I smiled faintly. "You already do," I replied. Grant's hands clenched at his sides. For a second, I thought he might do something stupid. Then he didn't. He took one step back, face twisting with rage and humiliation, then turned and walked away into the night. No punch, no shove, no scene. Even Grant understood that violence would only make my record stronger. I watched him disappear, then continued walking. When I got home, the condo felt wrong. Not empty, not quiet. Wrong, like a room after someone has left without closing the door properly. Elise was there. She stood in the living room with her arms crossed, still in her black dress. Makeup slightly smudged around her eyes like she'd fought her own face in the bathroom mirror and lost. The divorce envelope lay on the coffee table, opened, papers spread out like a wound. She looked up when I entered, and her eyes were raw. "You planned that," she said. I took off my shoes slowly. "You opened with a joke," I replied. "I closed with paper." Elise's laugh came out broken. "You don't get to act calm," she said, voice shaking. "Not after what you did to me." "What I did," I repeated. Elise's face twisted. "You destroyed my credibility," she hissed, in front of everyone. "You used mine first," I said calmly. Quietly, for weeks. Elise stepped toward me. "I was protecting myself," she snapped. You were acting strange." "Strange. Another label," I nodded. "You mean I stopped feeding your story," I said. Elise's eyes flashed. "You're a monster," she whispered. I tilted my head. "Monsters don't file clean," I replied. Elise's hands trembled. "Do you know what happens now?" she demanded. "Do you have any idea?" "Yes," I said. "Now you have to answer to policy, not feelings." Elise shook her head violently. "Policy doesn't apply to my marriage," she said. "It applies to your conduct," I replied. "And you made conduct your tool." Elise stared at me, breathing hard. Then her voice shifted, lower, more controlled, almost pleading. "Take it back," she said. I didn't answer immediately. Elise stepped closer, eyes shining with something close to fear. "You can say you were emotional," she said quickly. "You can say you overreacted. You can—" "There it is," I said softly. "You want me unstable." Elise froze. I continued calm, because unstable men are easy to dismiss. Elise's face crumpled for half a second. Then the HR chief returned. "You're abusive," she snapped. "This is emotional abuse." I nodded once. "Put it in writing," I said. Elise's eyes widened. "Stop saying that," she hissed. "Stop using it," I replied. She grabbed the papers off the table and shook them. "You think this is power?" she demanded. "You think you win because you printed a timeline?" "I don't win," I said. "I exit." Elise's breath hitched. "You can't just leave," she whispered. "After everything." "I can," I replied. "That's the point of paperwork." Elise stared at me, then dropped the papers back onto the table like they were burning her. "You're not perfect," she said, voice lowering. "You're not innocent." "I didn't claim perfect," I said. "I claim documented." Elise swallowed hard. "You want me to lose my job," she whispered. "I want you to stop using your job to hurt people," I replied. Elise's eyes flashed with rage again. "People," she spat. "You mean you." "I mean anyone you frame," I said. Elise looked away, jaw clenched. For a moment, she seemed smaller. Just a woman in a dress, standing in a condo with her life collapsing around her. Then she turned back and whispered, "If you walk away, I will tell everyone you're unstable. I will make sure—" I cut her off, voice still calm. "You already tried," I said. "And tonight, you tried in front of witnesses." Elise froze again. I stepped closer, not aggressive, just close enough that she had to see my eyes clearly. "Here's what's going to happen," I said quietly. "You will stop saying my name in rooms where minutes are kept. You will stop feeding scripts to HR. You will stop using wellness language as a weapon." Elise's lips trembled. "Or what?" she whispered. I nodded toward the coffee table. "Or the record grows," I said. "And it won't be just a timeline. It'll be policy." Elise stared at me for a long beat. Then she looked down at the papers again, and her shoulders sagged. For the first time, she looked tired instead of angry. "You're cold," she whispered. I smiled faintly. "You trained me," I replied. Elise's eyes filled, but she didn't cry. She hated crying. Tears were uncontrollable. "I don't know who you are," she said. "I'm the man you called trash," I replied. "Just organized." I walked past her toward the bedroom, opened a suitcase, and started packing the same way I packed everything. Clean, efficient, no drama. Elise stood in the doorway, watching. She didn't stop me. She didn't beg. She didn't scream. She just watched like she was memorizing the moment for a story she might tell later, except now she knew stories didn't beat records. As I zipped the suitcase, my phone buzzed. A message from Paula Venn. Minutes entry finalized. Evidence received. Timestamp logged. No commentary. I stared at the message for a second, then put my phone back in my pocket. Elise saw the movement and stiffened. "Who was that?" she asked, voice sharp again. I looked at her. "The record," I said. Elise swallowed hard. I lifted the suitcase and walked toward the door. Elise stepped aside without touching me. At the threshold, I paused and looked back once. Elise stood in the living room. Black dress, smeared makeup, hands clenched, divorce papers still spread out on the table like the aftermath of a storm. She looked like someone who had spent years believing she controlled outcomes and had just learned the difference between controlling people and controlling paper. "You'll regret this," she whispered, more out of habit than belief. I nodded once. "Maybe," I said, "but I'll regret it in peace." Then I walked out, letting the door close behind me with the soft click of a file being sealed.